Let's learn a shtickle Toldos Shimshon written by the Zera Shimshon on Perekei Avos, Perekei, Mishnah Beis. The Mishnah starts, Reb Gamliel benoy shel Reb Yehuda Hanasi Omer. Reb Gamliel, the son of Reb Yehuda Hanasi, says, Yofe Talmud Torah im derech eretz. It's proper, it's good to have Talmud Torah together with work. Why is that? Sheyagias shneim. For if one toils in both Torah and derech eretz and hard work, meshkachas ovoim, he'll forget to do averis. He won't do averis. He won't come to do averis. B'chol Torah she'ein ima melacha, any Torah that does not have with it work, soifa betela, it'll end up that even the Torah will become bottle v'gereres oven, and it'll bring the person to do averis. The Toldos Shimshon has a number of kashas. One of his kashas are that why is it that the beginning of the Mishnah, when we're referring to hard work, the Mishnah calls it derech eretz. Yofe Talmud Torah im derech eretz. That it's proper and it's good to have Torah together with hard work. And the Mishnah calls it derech eretz. And later in the Mishnah says, V'chol Torah she'ein ima melacha. Any Torah that does not have with it hard work, soifa betela, the Torah would be bottled. Why at the end of the Mishnah does the Mishnah refer to it as melacha, and the beginning of the Mishnah refers to work as derech eretz? That's one kasha. Another kasha the Toldos Shimshon has is, what's the lashon that the Mishnah uses sheyagias shneim? For if one toils in both Torah and melacha, mishkachas oven, it'll make him forget averis. Shouldn't to rather say matzeles me'oven or mevateles oven? It saves him from doing averis. What's the lashon that it makes him forget averis? And if it's true, one more kasha the Toldos Shimshon asks, if the end of the Mishnah says, V'chol Torah she'ein ima melacha, soifa betela, that Torah that does not have with it melacha, then the Torah will end up being bottled. So why does the beginning Mishnah use a much lighter term, Yofe Talmud Torah im derech eretz? It's proper, it's good. The Mishnah should say that you must have Torah im derech eretz. If the end of the Mishnah says that the whole Torah she'ein ima melacha, if Torah does not have with it melacha, then the Torah will be forgotten and bottled. So why does the beginning of the Mishnah say Yofe Talmud Torah? It's proper. It should say tzorich. You must have Talmud Torah with derech eretz. So in order to answer all these questions, the Toldos Shimshon says a murdig, brilliant pshat. And he starts that we know the Gemara in Ksubis, when Rebbe, which is Reb Yehuda Hanasi, was nifter. So he said, even though Shimon my son, is a greater chacham, but Reb Gamliel, my son, should become the Nasi. And the Gemara says, why is that? Because even though Reb Gamliel was not mamala mokam avoisov, he was not in the place of his father in chachma. However, in Yiras Shemayim, in Yiras Chet, he was mamalim mokum avoisov. He filled the place of his father, and that's why he became the Nasi, because he had the midah of Yiras Shemayim. Now, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that there's a question: if what's better, what should a dayan rather do? A din to paskin the halacha the way it says in Shulchan Aruch, or should he try to make a pshara, a compromise? And the Shulchan Aruch is gepaskin that of course it's much greater to make a compromise, a pshara. Chol bezdin ha'ois a pshara tomid, any bezdin that always makes compromises, hareza meshubach. It's much greater, it's praiseworthy if a bezdin could make a pshara, could make a compromise. And the Gemara Baba Metzia says, Lo chorva Yerushalayim, elo. Why was Yerushalayim? What was one of the reasons why Yerushalayim was destroyed? Was because Shehemidu Devreim al Din Torah. because the Dayanim paskined to the letter of the law instead of making a pshara, a compromise. So we see from these Gemaras and in Shulchan Aruch that a pshara is much greater for a dayan to make a compromise rather than paskin the din. And the Toldos Shimshon explains that the greatness, why is it so great and praiseworthy to make a pshara? Because in the original creation of the world, Hashem also realized that He cannot create the world based on din. If the Eibishter was to judge the world, everybody al pi din, what they deserved, then the world wouldn't last. So the Eibishter shitiv midas arachamim lemidas adin. He partnered midas arachamim, and the Eibishter himself also doesn't paskin with the din. And therefore it's praiseworthy. V'dayonim also, they don't go to the din, they look to make a pshara, a compromise. Now, pshara, zog the Toldos Shimshon, to make a compromise is dependent if you have Yireh Shamayim. And he proves this from a medrash, the medrash in Parshas Yisro, when Yisro was told Moshe Rabbeinu, V'ato sechezeh, you should go search and find dayonim that will help you judge and paskin halachas for Klal Yisrael. So the Medrash says, Yirei Elokim, on the pasuk that Yisro said, you should look out for dayonim that have Yirei Elokim, that have Yireh Shamayim. Says the Medrash, who are these people that have Yireh Shamayim? Eilu sha'oisim pshara bedin. These are dayonim that look to make a compromise in the din Torah. And the Mashah in Masechtas Sanhedrin explains, why is this? What's the connection between Yireh Shamayim and making a pshara? Zog the Mashah, because if a dayan paskins to the letter of the law al pi din, then there are times that he can make a mistake, whether he heard wrong information or he made a mistake in the psak by mistake, but he paskined wrong. Now if somebody has Yireh Shamayim, he's afraid to paskin wrong, so he's always looking to make a compromise. Therefore the Medrash says, who are dayonim that have Yireh Elokim? Dayonim that are looking to make a pshara, to make a compromise, and this way they know for sure that they were not oiva avera, they didn't paskin wrong, because they're looking to make a compromise. And one more thing adds the Toldos Shimshon, the halacha is that a dayan and a bezdin, they're allowed to take schar, they're allowed to take payment for sitting on the din Torah. And the reason for that is, even though to paskin a din Torah you're not allowed to get paid, however, the schar b'teila, the money that they could have made at that time, if they would have been working in another field, so they could charge schar b'teila, they could charge money for what they would have made if they would not be working or sitting on this din Torah. Now, even though that's how we paskin, there are some shittas that are machmer even to take schar b'teila, that a dayan should not take any money. However, the Bach in Choshen Mishpat Siman Tes says this whole machloikis, if a dayan could take payment for sitting al din Torah, is only if he's paskening al pi din. But if he's paskening al pi pshara, if the dayan is paskening based on a compromise, then he's allowed to take schar, because only schar on judging is also on a din. But a schar on a pshara, payment to make a compromise, a dayan is allowed to take. So now here comes the Toldos Shimshon, after everything, all these hakdomas, comes the Toldos Shimshon and he explains this Mishnah. Reb Gamliel was zoicher to the Nesias from Rabbeinu HaKodesh, from Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, from his father Rebbe, through the Midah of Yireh. That's what the Gemara says, that he was mamalim mokim avoisav b'yireh. Now that he became a Nasi, so he has to paskin Shilas. Now, because he had the Midah of Yireh, so he definitely was making psharas. He's going to make compromises. Like we saw in the Medrash, the taich of Yireh Elokim means those who make pshara. So Zok the Toldos Shimshon, now the Mishnah flows beautifully. Reb Gamliel, let's read the Mishnah again. Reb Gamliel benoy shel Reb Yehuda HaNasi oimer. Reb Gamliel, the son of Reb Yehuda HaNasi, says. Now let's remember, why did Reb Gamliel become the Nasi after Rabbi Yehuda Nasi because he had Yir Shemayim. So if he had Yir Shemayim, then obviously he's making a pshara. He's going to make compromises. So Rabbi Gamliel now is saying, Yafe Talmud Torah im derech eretz. What Rabbi Gamliel is referring to with the word derech eretz doesn't mean work, hard work, like we thought it meant. What derech eretz means is making a pshara, that it's correct and it's proper for a dayan and for a nasi. Besides Talmud Torah knowing the actual din, he has to have with that im derech eretz. He has to have with din, knowing halachas, he has to also have the midah of making a pshara. And how does the word pshara, how does compromise go into the words of derech eretz? Because derech eretz means the way of the world, the way the Eibishter created the world. The Eibishter created the world originally that it can't stand just on din, only together with midas harachamim. So derech eretz means the way of the world that the Eibishter created the world was to make a compromise. And therefore, Zok Rav Gamliel, a dayan, a nasi, that has Yir Shemayim has to know that besides paskening the din, he also has to have along with that derech eretz, which is a pshara. Why is that? If he does both, if he does pshara along with the din, then mishkachas oven, he'll forget the avera. And the Toldos Shimshon asked originally, what's the lashon mishkachas oven? He forgets to do avera. It should be that it saves him from doing avera. So he explains, because how does a dayan come to do avera? Because sometimes he has a bias and a gias towards one of the people standing in front of him, and he's trying to paskin the din, then sometimes, not knowingly, he tries to stick up to one side. That's if he's paskening a din. But if he's paskening a pshara, if he's making a compromise, then he's not thinking how he could stick up for the one that he likes. And therefore, it's mishkachas oven. It makes him forget, not even to think about sticking up for one side, because he's making a pshara. And therefore, Rabbi Gamliel said, if you'll have a pshara along with the Talmud Torah, if you'll have both of them, then it's mishkachas oven. You'll make you forget the avera of sticking up for one side, because you're making a compromise. In compromise, nobody's walking away winning. Now, if somebody might think, a dayan might think to himself, if I make psharas constantly, then people are going to say that I'm only doing it in order to be able to charge money. Because we saw the Bach said that if one makes a pshara, the dayan paskins a compromise, he's allowed to get paid. So someone might think that the dayan should think to himself, maybe, I shouldn't always make a pshara, because people are going to start saying that I'm only doing it to make money. And that, Rabbi Gamliel says, don't worry about it. B'chol Torah she'eni ma melacha soifa b'teila. You must have a job. And if the dayan chose his job to be paskening shailas, that's a beautiful job to pick. And therefore, b'chol Torah she'eni ma melacha, he shouldn't worry about people saying that he's doing it for the money, because he's right for doing it for the money. Because Torah needs with it also a job. Because without a job, it's soifa b'teila. It'll end up that even the Torah will be bottled, the gereres oven, and it'll come to do avera. May we all be zoiche, te brocha, and atzloche, b'chol ha'inyonim.